Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the October meeting of Leeds Council's Executive Board. And I'd just like to start the meeting by reminding everybody that this meeting is webcast, and welcome to anybody watching online to this meeting. I'm going to start with the formalities at the top of the agenda. So, item 1, Gerard, please. Are any appeals against refusal of inspection of documents?
Thanks, Chair. To confirm, no appeals have been received for today's meeting.
Thank you. Is there any exempt information, please? Item 2.
There's no exempt or confidential information today, no.
Great, thank you. Are there any late items, please?
No formal late items, Chair. However, prior to the meeting, board members have been provided with supplementary information in the form of a Children and Family Scrutiny Board statement regarding the proposed changes to transport assistance for post-16 SEND learners, which is included as Appendix 2 to Agenda Item 9.
That's great, thank you. On item 4, I shall turn to the board. Are there any declarations of interest anybody wishes to make at this point? I don't see anybody. I'll turn to item 5, which is the minutes of the meeting of the 18th of September this year. Is everybody happy with those minutes? I take everybody is. Thank you. And we'll move on to the first paper on today, which is under Councillor Venner's portfolio, please. Councillor Venner.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So this paper relates to the new hospitals programme. This was announced by the then government in 2019 and was a programme of 40 new hospitals, which included a new hospital at Leeds General Infirmary. But the programme has been subject to constant delays and only one hospital has been built so far. The current Secretary of State for Health and Social Care, Wes Streeting, has announced a review in which he has stated that the purpose of the review is to put the new hospitals programme on a sustainable footing, because it's never been properly funded, so that the crumbling estate across the country can be fixed and we can get and that will include us getting the much needed hospital here in Leeds. With the upcoming budget in mind, we are joining our friends and colleagues at the hospital in true Team Leeds style to jointly call on the government to accelerate the funding so that Leeds can have the hospital it desperately needs for the 21st century. And I did some media last week to amplify that message ahead of the budget. Thank you, Councillor Lamb, for your support of this. The paper refers to a cross-party letter which we're hoping all group leaders will sign to go to the government in advance of the budget. And the letter outlines the importance of the project for Leeds and asks for the project to be accelerated so that the build in Leeds can start as soon as possible. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'm going to invite Professor Phil Wood, the Chief Executive of Leeds Teaching Hospitals Trust, to speak to the paper, please, Phil.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. I think there are some key points to make around the paper in terms both of our readiness to proceed, which has been in place since pre-pandemic and in fact predates the 40 hospital announcement, and draw committee's attention on page 29, paragraph 5, to highlight the progress that's been made for several years ago in terms of planning permission, the support across West Yorkshire and beyond, and particularly to emphasise that this facility, whilst clearly a key for the City of Leeds, is also a regional facility, particularly for children and young people, not just for West Yorkshire, but actually beyond across the north of England, and therefore its critical importance in terms of delivering 21st century healthcare. Two other points I think are important to raise. One is that, as Councillor Venner very kindly helped with, our estate backlog is a significant challenge for the hospital, and the costs of that continue to accelerate until we can have the new hospital facility. And in addition, in contrast to most of the other schemes in the programme, as colleagues will know, this has been part of a very ambitious city centre development of the 5-hectare site, which will form the innovation village as part of the innovation arc for the city, with inward economic investment and job creation. And the first phase of that has made progress with West Yorkshire Investment Zone funding for one of the buildings on that site to be developed as a state. We feel that the hospital will be consistent with the government's 3 big shifts in healthcare. We also feel it will contribute to an improvement in the environmental impact of the healthcare facilities in Leeds, and is consistent with the Healthy Leeds plan and the ambitions that the city has around improving the health of the poorest the fastest. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Councillor Lamb, would you like to come in, please?
Yep, thank you, Chair, and thank you for those contributions. And I'm pleased that this is on the agenda, and I'm grateful to the leader for bringing it at great haste, because it wasn't planned to be here today originally. And again, I think it's important to make these points that often residents will criticise us for not working together and not being collegiate. And it's absolutely right on an issue like this that we do that. So I'm pleased that we are doing that. I'm grateful as well for the support of other opposition groups and group leaders who've worked with me, and then through me with the leader and others to get this to the table today. I think it is that you could aim perfectly valid criticism at both the previous government and the current government for the delays and uncertainty that have been caused by announcements, and it is all politicians on all sides have agreed that this needs to happen for Leeds. The current Chancellor, the Leeds MP, was very clear before the election that this should happen, this must happen, and the delays were an outrage, and I agreed with her then, and I agree with her now, that the delays are an outrage. So it is quite right with one voice as Team Leeds. We just need our MPs to get on board that Team Leeds spirit as well, and also back these calls to the government. And I very much hope that on the 30th of October, the Chancellor will stand up and confirm the funding and give the green light so that this can go ahead. As I alluded to, this has been pulled together at great pace, and so there wasn't time for the usual back and forth that we might have had. So there are a couple of amendments that I would like to propose. I have circulated them to the leader and officers and other members in advance, but I've just been asked, for the benefit of people watching that don't have the piece of paper I've got, just to confirm the suggestions. So in terms of recommendation A and B, I don't propose any changes to those. I'm proposing a new recommendation C, which is that the Executive Board is asked to note that 4 years of delays have so far cost the NHS Trust £300 million. Further delays, owing to the latest government review of the NHS new hospital programme, will cost the NHS considerably more. So what was previously recommendation C would then become recommendation D, and I've just suggested a couple of small amendments to recommendation E, which would then read as follows. The Executive Board requests that, given the Department for Health and Social Care Treasury review of the new hospitals programme, Executive Board make a submission to the Treasury before the budget on the 30th of October, clearly stating the importance of modernised hospital provision in Leeds and requesting that the Leeds scheme be permitted to go ahead without delay. The Leader and Executive Member for Equality and Health and Wellbeing have sought cross-party support for a letter in support of the Council's submission.
Thank you, Councillor Lamb. Councillor Venner.
I'm happy to second Councillor Lamb's amendments.
Thank you. Is there anything else you want to add, Councillor Lamb? That's great, thank you. Are there any more comments on this item from anybody, please? I don't see anybody else wanting to come in, so I will conclude by thanking, well, first of all, thanking Professor Wood and the team and our officers for working to turn this paper around quickly, making sure we can, as a council, reflect our clear view about the need to move forward. And clearly, when we're talking about the new hospital, the central point is the healthcare that's provided, but also the comments Professor Wood made about the hospital's work with ourselves as a council on developing the innovation arc is really important for the economic future of the city as well. And I'd like to note note that that's something that's really important to us as well, and we're really grateful for Leeds Teaching Hospitals Trust for working with us on that, and it shows our close working together. I appreciate Councillor Lamb working with us to get this paper to today's exec board, and I will move, as we turn to the recommendations. Obviously we are referring to the amended recommendations as proposed by Councillor Lamb, seconded by Councillor Venner. I know members of the board have those recommendations in paper in front of us, so I take it everybody is happy with those recommendations. Thank you everybody, and thank you, and we'll look forward to how this proceeds. So I'm going to move on to the next item, please, Councillor Venner, which is item 7.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a report on our first year of being a Fast Track City. Fast Track Cities is a campaign to end HIV, hepatitis C and TB new infections by 2030. It's a very ambitious programme, and we're the first city in the Yorkshire and Humber to be a Fast Track City, and we're joining 500 cities worldwide. It is an ambitious target, and is more of a challenge around hepatitis C and TB than it is around HIV, because for a number of reasons there's less of a history of activism and advocacy around Hep C and TB that's been one of the great strengths of the huge advances in medicine around HIV. There's less people campaigning with direct lived experience, partly, which is something we're really encouraging in terms of getting people's voices into the campaign. But it's fairly vulnerable populations who tend to have Hep C and TB, such as drug users, people homeless, newly arrived migrants. The paper outlines the achievements of our first year, the partnership working to identify the people most at risk and encourage testing, the anti-stigma work, and the community grants which are given to grassroots organisations who have really good reach into some of those vulnerable populations. There's a celebration event which I'm very much looking forward to next month. It involves a catwalk. I'm not taking part, but I think I am introducing the catwalk. And that'll be very much a celebration of around, reducing stigma and people being open about their lives and their experience. And it's great that we've got this far in terms of our first year as a Fast Track City. The report also outlines future plans, which includes a need to get more women onto PrEP. So I'll leave it there, thank you, Chair, in terms of opening comments, but happy to take questions, and there's officers joining us, as well as Victoria being here. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Venner. Are there any comments? Councillor Lamb, please.
Thank you. Just very briefly, I will steer well clear of a catwalk for everybody's benefits, I think. But welcome the paper. My only question is just around sort of the measuring and metrics and how we're going to follow progress through on this. It is really important and pleasing to see us doing it, but it's just what are we going to measure, and is there, given we're going to be really doing more screening, raising awareness, is it likely that the incidences may go up initially because of that before hopefully we start to see them come down rapidly then?
Thank you. Victoria, Sharon, please.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, we are having a workshop in February to look at how we do the ambition in Leeds, because at the moment it's just an ambition to get to zero, but whether that's realistic or just something to aim for. But we are looking at what that means to Leeds, and we will. The more we test, the more we will detect. So we're looking at how we can demonstrate progress while probably increasing the numbers. So we'll be about partnership work, maximising on the opportunities and having some realistic goals for Leeds.
Thank you, Sharon. Victoria, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Lamb. Just on the specific question of the measurements, the indicators around HIV and bloodborne viruses are all part of the dashboard that we have as a health protection board for the city. So we're more than happy to share that with the board. But it's all integrated into our kind of team lead system approach to health protection, so it's part of that process. But we can share that with you. And as Sharon was saying, we're very aware of the fact that in the most recent dashboards, some of, as Councillor Venner said, some of those indicators have actually gone up for the things we want to drive down because we are testing more, and also because we have kind of globally high levels of infections around some of the infections we want to reduce in Leeds. So we're managing this very internationally as part of a system. But yeah, so we need to keep a particular eye on the rate of HIV infection particularly, and how we can work more closely with people who acquire infections over the seas and then come into the city, and how we can get that early support to them. So we will share the dashboard, more than happy to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. Councillor Venn, is there anything?
No, I'm not happy to move the recommendations if there aren't any further questions.
Great, thanks. So the recommendations are on page 35. I take it everybody is happy with those recommendations. That's great. We'll move on to Councillor Hayden's portfolio, please, and item 8.
Thank you, Leader. This is the annual report on academic outcomes, and it's a detailed report of the outcomes of statutory assessments that took place in our primary and secondary schools in Leeds in the 2022-2023 academic year. The report covers outcomes from the early years foundation stage right through to Key Stage 5, and I just want to take this opportunity to thank every child and young person who undertook an exam or a whole host of exams, and their teachers and support staff and parents and carers and anybody who supported them, because it's not an easy time in a young person's life, and they've done incredibly well. Outcomes for Leeds pupils are mixed across the different education phases, with the strongest performance in the secondary phase. Both Attainment 8 and Progress 8 measures are above the national average. Leeds Progress 8 outcomes are in the top quartile. This is a value-added measure which looks at the difference made to attainment of young people at the end of a secondary school. So on average, Leeds pupils achieve just over a grade higher per Attainment 8 GCSE compared to pupils nationally with the same Key Stage 2 prior attainment. This is a really positive achievement for Leeds as a core city, with all the challenges such as levels of child poverty that come with that. However, we're not complacent, and we want to work even harder together to improve outcomes for children and young people at every stage of their education, especially those with special educational needs and disability and other kinds of disadvantage. The report details the actions taken by learning improvement services and partners to support schools and improve outcomes. I'll leave it there, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Hayden. Councillor Lamb, would you like to come in, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report. I'd add my congratulations to the students for their results, and thanks to teachers and all other associated staff for the work they do to support our young people. The first thing I would say is just I think it's right to acknowledge that what the Leeds results and the national results show irrefutably is that the education reforms of the last 14 years have worked, and Britain is now a world leader in educational outcomes for young people. One of the things that strikes out that obviously this is not the place for full scrutiny of it, but attendance is a big issue, particularly since COVID, and I think the impact of COVID on young people is something that there is national and local recognition of, but I think it's something that we should be looking in more detail at. I can say anecdotally only, and from talking to other people, that you can start to see the impact in the labour market with young people that are finding it very challenging to get, having had a really tough time and 2 years of their childhood and grown-up experience that they're never going to get back. And we've got to constantly monitor the impacts, and it'd be useful to hear from Councillor Hayden officers what their view is on what more we could do in Leeds. It's not unique to Leeds at all, it's a national issue, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't be trying to be at the forefront of innovating and looking at what we can do to support those young people that have missed out on an awful lot in their lives.
Thank you. Julie, please.
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Lamb. You're absolutely right. This is a national issue. It's an issue that has been exacerbated as a consequence of the pandemic, and it is an absolute priority for us in the city. We have spent quite a lot of time in the Children and Young People's Partnership, and that's the multi-agency partnership which reports into the local Safeguarding Children's Partnership Executive Board on education generally as a protective factor, but in particular around children attending and being able to engage in education in the city and how we can improve that as a partnership. I hope that you're reassured to know as well that it's an area that we have discussed in detail at scrutiny, at the Children and Families Scrutiny Board quite recently. So again, recognising education as a protective factor, but recognising the reasons why children are not attending to the same level as they were pre-pandemic, and it is quite complex, as you can imagine, in terms of children's mental health, just in terms of attitudinal changes, in terms of parents and carers as a consequence of children not having to attend to the same level during the pandemic. So it is a priority for us. There's a focus in terms of scrutiny, and there's a focus in terms of the LSCP exec, and that will continue. Lots of creative work going on across the partnership to support children in terms of their attendance increasing. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hayden, please.
Thank you. And yes, I'm glad that Julie mentioned that we spoke about it in quite some detail at scrutiny last week, and when we took the annual attendance report, and there's a lot of detail in that about what is happening in the city to help children and young people attend school as regularly as possible. I just want to note that these 16-year-olds that will be turning 17 now were in their year 7 when the pandemic hit. So they literally just started high school. They didn't have a normal experience for the first 2 or 3 years of high school, so they've done incredibly well. They're a grade on average, a grade above national average at year 11, and they didn't have the best. In fact, they had a completely bizarre beginning to their high. Also, if you look at the year 6s, the 11-year-olds who have just started high school, they were in year 2. So they were just starting on their journey. So again, they've done incredibly well. And the ones at foundation stage, well, they were babies and they couldn't go out anywhere except for an hour a day. And so we're talking about children and young people who have achieved this whilst their key years were in really quite bizarre and disadvantaged situation that we all lived through, but we didn't have to live through that as children. So I just want to, we're talking about attendance, and thank you for raising it. I just wanted to say that because this is an incredible group of children and young people.
Thank you, Councillor Hayden. Does anybody else want to comment on this paper? Okay, I'll turn to the recommendations on page 52 and see if everybody is happy with those. I take it we are. If we could move on to item 9, please, Councillor Hayden.
Thank you. This is the Children and Young People's Transport Policy, and it's the outcome of the consultation on proposed changes to transport assistance for post-16 learners with special educational needs and disabilities. So firstly, I'd like to thank the Children and Family Scrutiny Board for their work around this report and the board's support in ensuring that the concerns of young people and their families have been fully considered when finalising these proposals. And we've got the Scrutiny Board's statement appended to this report. The background to this paper is that the Council has a duty to provide home-to-school transport assistance for children with SEND of statutory school age, and then it is the parents' responsibility to make transport arrangements for post-16, but the Council has continued to provide substantial assistance post-16. The recommendation in this paper follow consultation with young people and their families, and the proposed steps which will reduce the significant overspend currently at 3.75 million for 2024-25, whilst maintaining a discretionary transport offer to post-16 students with SEND. It sets out our commitment to support young people and their families through a personal transport allowance, through provision of our award-winning independent travel training, and allows for the continuation of the council organised transport for those meeting exceptional circumstances criteria. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Hayden. Councillor Lamb, would you like to come in, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'll start by saying I understand completely why this is being looked at and why changes are being considered. I also am well aware that this has been looked at in depth by scrutiny and that there's been an acceptance of the main recommendations of scrutiny in this. But I do want to highlight some concerns, and if you don't mind, I've had, I'm sure as many others have, a lot of correspondence from parents, and I just wanted to read one out, which is typical, which kind of will demonstrate the point that I want to get to. So it says, I'm in touch with a lot of parent carers of disabled young people, and we are all feeling really worried and stressed about the possibility that transport will be removed for post-16 young people. A financial contribution will be pointless for every parent I know, as we would find it impossible to get our young people to their settings due to work commitments and other children at different schools. I'm hoping my child will attend the East Silk post-16 provision, which is currently in the city centre, and there's no way I could get her there and collect on time while still taking my other children to their school. I couldn't send her alone in a taxi, and even if I could, the price for that is over £5,000 a year, not £1,000. It's impossible to find suitable PAs to help us, and even if they could, most of the parent carers I know wouldn't be able to afford to pay a PA to do every drop-off and pick-up. And it goes on. I could share many others, as I'm sure most of you could as well. I think the challenge, and where I'm looking for some more reassurance, and I feel there still needs to be more work around this. So first of all, there's a 20-mile radius cap proposed. I would just like confirmation here that officers will have the flexibility to step outside of that. And not only that, but they would be proactive in doing so, that this isn't one of those situations where parents have to battle the council to get what they need. So if the appropriate setting for their child is 40 miles away, that's where they should go. We should be supporting them to go there. I fully appreciate the need to make savings, but I think there's more work to do given the volume of correspondence and concern that's being expressed, to work with parents and carers and settings to make sure the way this is executed and implemented gives people the confidence that it will be around the needs of children and young people. And I've long been an advocate of independent travel training where that's appropriate. That can help young people to live much more fulfilling lives for the rest of their lives, but it's not always appropriate. So this, I'm certain the intention here is to put children and young people at the heart of this, but that has not come through to parents and carers in the way we've got to this point. So I, for Gerard's benefit, want to reserve my position on this, but what I'm looking for is reassurance that perhaps we can do just a little bit more work, perhaps defer the absolute decision and give that comfort and confidence to parents that where they need support, and that's the right thing for their child and their circumstance, that there will be the flexibility to deliver it, and that we won't make it a battle. There will be a nice, simple process that is easy to engage with.
Thank you, Councillor Lamb. Julie, please.
Thank you, Leader. As Councillor Lamb set out, we've had a really detailed discussion about the proposed changes at scrutiny. There was a recognition at scrutiny of the very challenging circumstances that we find ourselves in, and that actually the current policy is not sustainable. So we are very aware, of the impact on children and families, as well as the opportunities which have been described already today in terms of that independent travel training, and actually the positive feedback that we've had not only from parents and carers but from children and young people themselves who talk about not wanting to be stigmatised by having to use specific modes of travel, but actually wanting support with their independence. There's not shying away from the fact that this is a very difficult proposal. In the conversations that we had in scrutiny, and that is reflected in the fact that we have accepted the points and recommendations made by scrutiny, there was detailed discussion and focus on the process that we will have in place around exceptions. You know, we recognise that we need to look at the individual needs of children and families, you know, where it's clear that there are specific needs which do require officers, you know, to step outside the agreed policy in terms of exceptions, you know, that there will be provision for us to do that. We're really clear, you know, in terms of the financial situation that we do need to progress this because it's not sustainable and it is impacting on our ability to provide ongoing support to, you know, children and families right across the city. I'll repeat myself in terms of the detailed conversation that we've had at scrutiny, the fact that we have accepted the recommendations that came from scrutiny. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to come in, Councillor Hayden?
Yes, please. Thank you. In terms of the parental letter that you read out, the proposed here is that there won't be a financial contribution from families, where the flexibility will also extend to the personal travel allowance and whether it is enough. And any family in hardship, then now they will be looked at individually. I can give an assurance that every child and young person who is applying, and this policy does not apply to anybody currently in receipt of travel. It will start from next September 2025. And we're not asking for a financial contribution from families. In terms of the comment made about that you made, Councillor Lamb, about if they need to go 40 miles away, we are working really hard in this city that no young person should have to travel that far to go, and we're opening new send provision, especially at post-16, to ensure that our young people can stay in Leeds and do not have to travel those distances. I'm working very hard on that because it's not good for anyone to travel that amount of miles, and especially if you have other challenges such as a special educational need or a disability. So I just thought I'd add that.
Thank you, Councillor Hayden. Councillor Lamb, please.
Yeah, thank you. If I can just come back, there are lots of things in this that have been ducked for too long and actually are not good for children and young people. And I'm sure we've all heard the tales of children there are 4 of them going on a bus and an hour and a half or 2 hours to get where they need to go. So there are things that need addressing. The key point I'm really trying to push is about the implementation and the communication of this policy. And I think that's where more work needs to be done. And we are a big and at times far too clunky organisation that people find it difficult to engage with and navigate. And with something like this, it's really, really important that people understand that those exceptions are there, that they will get the support. You're right, we want everyone to be educated as close to their home as possible. That will not always be the case. That will not always be the most appropriate setting. And in those circumstances, it's often that those families, they have an awful lot going on in their lives anyway. The last thing they need is to have to battle with the council to get the flexibility that's available. And the reassurance I'm looking for is twofold. One, that we will spend more time on communication, and 2, the process of implementing this policy will be as child and family friendly as it can possibly be. And the only way you can do that is to work with children and families and settings to get the communication right and to make sure that the way parents can approach and engage is really easy and straightforward and not a fight.
Thank you. Julie, would you like to come in, please?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I can absolutely commit to the fact that children and families colleagues, will have and will continue to engage as best as we can with the parents and carers and the children who are impacted by the policy. In Leeds, our whole foundation is about restorative practice, and that is, about leaning in to the difficult conversations, not shying away from the difficult conversations. We know, that when we have difficult conversations, actually the importance of transparency, of simplicity, of clarity, and creating the space, where individual parents and carers, can come forward and receive that advice, that guidance, that support from individual officers, but also using our forums, using our online resources, you know, again, to communicate as effectively as we possibly can. And I absolutely commit to that.
Thank you, Julie. I think at this point I'm going to turn to the recommendations on page 84. I know Councillor Lamb has stated he's reserving his position. I see everybody else is happy with the recommendation, so we will move on to item 10, please, Councillor Hayden.
Thank you, Leader. So in the summer, in order to address the significant overspend and long-term challenges, Executive Board determined to continue operating 9 Little Owl nurseries directly, close 3 by the 31st of August, and for 12 settings begin a market-sounding exercise with local schools, private, voluntary or independent sector providers to gauge their interest in operating those settings. This paper reports on this exercise and on the parent-carer engagement conducted in September for these 12 settings. So the paper proposes to seek to transfer 4 settings, that's St Mary's, Hunslet, Parklands, Hawksworth Wood and Quarry Mount, to nearby schools. For the remaining 8 Little Owl settings, work will begin on the formal process of determining whether provision can move to alternative providers. The Council will continue to engage with parents and carers, and in line with feedback we have received on what's important to them, we will seek assurances that all future nursery provision will be of high quality, with appropriate level of fees, and will continue to be child-centred and ensure the most vulnerable children in the city are well catered for. This will be considered on a setting-by-setting basis, and importantly, should these needs not be met, the default position will be for the Council to continue as the provider. Despite financial challenges and there being no requirement to directly deliver provision, Leeds will retain at least 9 Council-run nurseries, all rated good or outstanding, more than any other comparator city, and in fact we will have the same number as all the other core cities put together, with improved staffing resilience. In providing its own direct nursery service, Leeds remains an outlier among councils in England, and this investment at a time of significant financial stress for the council and local government in general is a sign of the council's commitment to early intervention and delivering the best start it can to children across the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hayden. Councillor Lamb would like to come in, please.
Yes, thank you, Leader. It slightly feels like we've swapped clothes on this issue. So I've got a few questions. So first of all, can Councillor Hayden tell the board what the impact assessment on child poverty has shown us?
I'll bring in an officer to give the detail, then I can give a more political answer.
I think in terms of those sorts of issues that Councillor Lamb raises, I think it is important to acknowledge that what we're asking Executive Board today to do is to agree the principle of a series of changes, and then what we will then do is do further work in terms of the bespoke analysis of what that means at individual settings. That in its essence will effectively hone in on one of those issues being child poverty, because it's quite important that we take that localised perspective on that. What we have done realistically is taken that broader view in terms of the equality impact assessment that's required for the decision to be made now. I think there's an overriding principle that we recognise that child poverty remains a significant issue in the city, and the Executive Board has had a paper on that relatively recently, so it's something that we want to address. I think we're acknowledging in the work that we're saying that the issue around cost of provision is an issue that the Council would wish to engage with potential providers about, and that will need to feed into that objective analysis of when we get into a procurement process in terms of what operators may or may not be selected, And as Councillor Hayden very clearly said, the Council's default position is that if we do not think that those arrangements are suitable, then we will continue to provide that provision as we currently provide it.
Thank you. Councillor Hayden, please.
The previous government spent the past 14 years cutting funding for local authorities, schools, health, social care and welfare benefits. The rise in child poverty in Britain from 2014 to 2021 was the worst amongst 40 major countries, according to UNICEF. I'm struggling to answer this without getting really quite animated about it. At £58 a day, being in a little owl's nursery is not going to address child poverty. We are significantly more affordable than other private providers. What is not suggested here is that and as Phil Evans says, price and what, if it is a private provider, that will be taken into consideration as to what they're going to provide. The free hours, the 15 or 30 free hours, does go some way into tackling child poverty, and obviously, well, it might not be obvious, every child that qualifies or every parent that qualifies for that will receive it no matter who is delivering the nursery provision. We have a statutory duty to ensure sufficiency, and we will be still an outlier in providing it ourselves when all other authorities had to get rid of their nurseries as a direct provider many years ago.
Thank you. Councillor Lamb, would you like to come back in, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm well aware there are an awful lot of parents and providers and carers watching this, and I think they will feel extremely disappointed with that response. The simple answer to my question was, we don't know what the impact will be on child poverty of this policy. Of course, I wasn't suggesting this will solve child poverty on its own, but it would be useful to know as a decision maker about whether to proceed what the impact would be. The clear answer is we don't know. So my next question, which hopefully we can get a clearer answer on, is if we think private providers can make these settings a success, that assumes that we think they're going to operate at a profit, otherwise it won't be sustainable. So if that's the case, why can't this council operate them at a surplus and make this a help to the financial challenge rather than a hindrance?
In order to do that, we would have to put the costs up. You've just talked about child poverty. Child poverty comes from their parents not having enough money. So we have kept it affordable, but in order to make a surplus, we would have to put up the costs. That would have a direct impact on families' ability, although to work more than 30 hours, say, because they do get the 30 hours free childcare. So we can't, but having said that, we don't want, if it is a private provider, and it could be third sector or other institutions that may be able to leverage in other funding that we can't as a council. So this is a complex area. We're just starting we've had interest in the market sounding exercise, but we cannot afford the overspend because of the huge cuts we've had for 14 years. We cannot keep spending more than we've budgeted, keeping these provisions. I would love to still have 21 directly provided nurseries. I think you know that. But we cannot afford to because of the savage cuts to our budget for the last 14 years.
Thank you. Councillor Lamb.
Thank you. One more, if I may, Chair. Thank you. And that answers let the cat out of the bag, that what this is all about is putting the prices up. You just want someone else to do it instead of you wanting to do it. And actually, if we were looking to make it wash its own face, by definition, we would need to put the fees up by less than the private sector will need to put the fees up. And parents have regularly said they would be comfortable with a conversation about fees going up and perhaps paying for some of the incidental things like nappies and things that they don't currently have to, that they would if it was a private provider. Yeah, you've let the cat out of the bag on that one. My final question is really to our legal officers to understand why this is exempt from calling. There are a lot of people who have concerns about this, and I would like to challenge that and say it should be available for calling.
Catherine, would you like to come in, please, on that last question?
Yeah, thank you. This has already been through the call-in process, and so it's not eligible to be called in on this occasion. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Councillor Lamb.
Yeah, I feel there's enough difference between the decisions that were called in previously, and I appreciate that's the view of the legal officer. I strongly feel that this should be eligible for calling. I think we're making a mistake here. I think there are other options available, and I would urge the administration to change tack. I certainly will not be supporting the recommendations.
Julie, please.
Thank you, Leader. I suppose I just wanted to highlight the fact, the statutory responsibility that the local authority has in this area. So, you know, it's enshrined in the Children Act 2006 and the Childcare Act of 2016 that the local authority duty is in relation to sufficiency, you know, and nothing else. The duty, our duty, relates to sufficiency and ensuring that we have sufficient childcare places in the city for children. As Councillor Hayden has said, the fact that actually in the proposals, you know, we are retaining, you know, at least 9 nurseries, you know, which is way beyond any other city and any other core city in particular, reflects the commitment in the city around, you know, our early years provision. So we're going beyond, you know, significantly beyond our statutory responsibility in this area. Coming back to the fees, and as Phil has said, you know, we will be able to look at that in more detail once we can progress the expression of interest that we have had. But we know from the expression of interest that actually in terms of the daily fees, you know, they range from between about £40 and £66. And actually as it stands at the moment, we are in the middle of that. You know, so actually we're not talking huge differences. We're not talking huge movement. And actually we are not, you know, the cheapest daycare in the city. So I wanted to make those 2 points. But importantly, around the local authority duty, which is around sufficiency.
Thank you. Councillor Lamb, please.
Simple question. Can you tell me where I find a £40 childcare setting in the city?
Councillor Lamb, I don't have that detail to date here as I stand, but that is the information that we've got back through the expression of interest. So I'll be really happy to talk to you after this meeting, either myself or officers.
Thank you. Councillor Hayden, shall we sum this item up, please?
Yeah, I just want to say that the cat's well gone out of the bag. I'm not, you know, I'm not letting out any secrets about the fact that we've had huge cuts to budgets, and that as a consequence of that and other decisions made, child poverty has gone through the roof, and that we're having to spend more on statutory services to keep the most vulnerable children in this city safe, and then we would, and therefore we don't have as much money for, well, any money for the non-statutory services, which this is. A small number of parents at the calling, after one of them talking about the fact that fees were a very big issue because she didn't get the 3 hours, said that they'd be prepared to pay more. I do not believe they speak for the majority of parents who access, and if we had to put up fees in one little house settings, we'd have to put them across the board, and that would be unfair to all the other parents of the 1,800 children that we currently provide for. So this council has struggled for quite a few years to maintain direct delivery of a huge number compared to others of our own nursery provision, and we have to look to partners to help us, and there are some extremely good partner providers of early years education out there, as well as our own. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hayden. I'm going to turn to the recommendations on page 161 and just check with Councillor Lamb how he wishes his position to be recorded, please? All right, so we'll note that and turn, and I see everybody else supports the recommendations. That's great, thank you. So we shall move on from Councillor Hayden's papers, thanks, on to Councillor Cooper. Item 11, please.
Thank you, Leader. And the first of my papers today is the Gambling Act Review of Statement of Licensing Policy. So every 3 years, the local authority must undertake a review of its licensing policy and bring about a new policy with any changes that are felt needed. A consultation has taken place and we did receive some responses around that from some interested organisations, and from their responses some amendments have been brought forward in the policy as well. This report has also been to Scrutiny Board for their views as well and for their information. And they were all supportive of us taking this work forward. In the report itself, I just want to point out actually that it does state some of the great work that goes on in this city about addressing gambling harm in the city, and how really well developed that work has been over a number of years between public health colleagues, between the financial inclusion team in the council, and also other partners, the NHS and others that are not within the council as well. And for us to host, you know, the really good treatment services available in this city that address the gambling harm that we know can be caused through gambling. So I will leave it there. Just to say, the report also from Councillor Lamb's previous comments is exempt from calling, but it's already been to scrutiny. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lamb would like to come in, please.
Thank you. I wasn't going to suggest we should be calling this one in. So just I welcome the report and happy to support this paper. Just a few questions, if I may. So you alluded to receiving some responses to the consultation. A whopping 5, I think, is the correct number, if I understand correctly. So that's either a sign that we're doing it so well that nobody feels the need to raise any concerns, or that nobody really knew or was aware of the consultation. So it'd be remiss of me not to flag it up and just get some assurance that it's more of the former than the latter. And secondly, I'll just do them in a list. On page 300, referring to the breach of the Gambling Commission regulations at the casino, one of the things that flagged up was that the Gambling Commission didn't inform us directly, I understand, back in 2021. So have we made any moves to ensure that if there were to be any future breaches, they would inform us directly, and have there been any in that period? And the final point was just to welcome seeing that the public health team is now closely involved in both licensing applications and this. Just be useful to get a few more details of how this is working in practice in relation to gambling specifically.
Thank you. James, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. On the first question, yes, I can reassure. I think it's the comprehensiveness of the policy and the fact that actually we do regularly consult on this. And we've had numerous comments back in the past that incorporated those into the policy. So I wasn't surprised that the number of formal responses was only 5, but they were quite detailed responses as well from organisations. In terms of your second question about the casino and the Gambling Commission, we did write to them. We did make our views very, very clear. There haven't been any further breaches that we've been informed of since that time. But whether they will listen to our advice in terms of giving us more information next time, we shall have to wait and see.
Thank you. I don't see any more comments on this paper, so I shall turn... Oh, sorry, Councillor Lamb.
Sorry, there was just the bit about the public health impact and how that's going to work in practice.
I don't know the detail of that. I don't know whether Victoria has got any further information on that.
No, thank you for your comment, Councillor Lamb. I mean, we've recently, as you've been aware, become more involved in this agenda, which is something that we were very keen to do. And it feels like it's working well so far in terms of public health colleagues being able to give the evidence of impact on health on any proposed changes or developments. So that feels good. It would be great if we could do more. I think we're in the early days of this. So I think we need to, both for public health input into the gambling agenda and also for the licensing work, I think it's something we would be keen to build on, but obviously just mindful of capacity because it is pretty labour-intensive work. So we're having to prioritise the ones that are the best use of time, but it would, yeah, thank you for the feedback, and we'll reflect on how we best use the capacity we have to best effect. But it has been very welcomed by the members involved in those processes, so I will feed that back to the team. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. If there's no more comments, I'll turn to recommendations, and I take it everybody is happy with the recommendations on page 219. That's great. Shall we move on to item 12, please, Councillor Cooper?
Thank you, Leader. And item 12 is the usual item that we have at Executive Board each time on the financial health monitoring for the current year. This is month 5. And the report is outlining a projected spend at month 5 of overspend of £22 million, which is very similar to last month's report, just a slight change in that. So we are showing some consistency around the work in mitigating the overspend in certain areas. The report goes into detail about the work that we're undertaking to mitigate any further overspend and indeed to bring down that 22 million within the rest of the year. And the detail members can see in the report as usual. I don't intend to take too long on that, but I'm prepared to take any questions, Leader. Thank you.
Councillor Lamb.
Yeah, thank you. There's not a lot to say that we haven't said in recent meetings anyway. My question is, obviously, we're in month 5 here, going into month 6. Things haven't got worse, which is good. But it looks like there's every prospect the savings targets are not going to be achieved in years. So last year we had to depend quite heavily on reserves to achieve a balanced position. What's the current plan if we can't pull this back?
Thank you. I'll bring Victoria Bradshaw in, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to clarify that the savings proposals that were put in place, the majority of them are being achieved. The overspends that we're experiencing are around the increased demand in both children's and adult social care. We are seeing those pressures continuing, although the overspend position is staying at 22 million. There is a lot of work going on within the directorates, and some of the measures that we have put in place is meaning that that overspend position isn't getting any worse, and is dealing with some of the risks that we'd highlighted in the report. It is a very challenging position, and we've got further actions that are detailed in here that we're looking to reduce that overspend position down. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. I don't see anybody else wanting to come in on this paper, so I'll turn to the recommendations on page 310, and I take it everybody is happy with those recommendations. That's great, thank you. We're on to item 13, please, Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Leader. And item 13 is the report detailing the first of the revenue savings proposals for the year 25 to 28. You know that we brought the medium-term financial strategy update last month to Executive Board that identified a gap and of next year of £106 million. So these are the first of the initial proposals to Executive Board to help bridge that gap for next year and the following 2 years after that. The proposals that are brought for today are a total of £37.4 million for next year, which still leaves us a projected gap of £66.6 million. And therefore we'll have to bring further proposals to the Executive Board in November and December in order for us to meet our legal requirement to set a balanced budget for 25-26. It's usually a set practice that we leave comments on these to Council, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Lamb, please.
Yeah, thank you. And noting the final comments, my questions are really around the 104 million figure as it is now in total. So, and how realistic that is now that with the noises coming out of government. You would not have assumed anything for a national insurance rise if you'd read any of the parties' manifestos before the general election, because it was pretty clear everyone was committed to not raising national insurance. It's now pretty clear that the new government are intent on raising national insurance, so it would be useful to know what impact it would have on our budget if national insurance was employers' national insurance was added to pension contributions, or if there was an increase. And the other thing which is a big uncertainty is, if I'm correct, we've assumed 3.5% for a pay award. The average, I understand, across the public sector is 5.5%. What would the impact be if there was another 2% on top?
Thank you. Victoria, please.
Thank you, Chair. It is early at the moment around the national insurance contributions. We are aware last time the government did increase national insurance contributions. They did compensate us through this, the services grant, which is what we would expect for future years. But obviously until we get that announcement and how the funding will be provided, we'll need to wait for the October budget, but then also the provisional settlement in more detail. In regard to the pay award, we have assumed 3.5%. Obviously, we know that inflation was announced today at 1.7% on CPI, so we are expecting that we feel that that 3.5% would be more in line with where we'd expect pay increases to go in the future. However, every 1% on the pay is around about 4.3 million to the council, so it is quite a significant impact for us. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Victoria. And we're all excited to see what's announced on October the 30th, Councillor Lamb. It sounds like you're as excited as we are. Okay, are there any more comments on this paper? No. Okay, I'll turn to the recommendations on page 356. Councillor Lamb.
Well, as the tradition, as Councillor Cooper alluded to, we will reserve our position at this point in time. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll move on to take it. Everybody else is happy with those recommendations. That's great. And we'll move on to Councillor Pride's portfolio, please. Item 14.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis. So this is the Highway Maintenance Strategy Review, which covers the maintenance of almost 3,000 kilometres of highways and over 4,500 kilometres of footways. So back in March, full council this year, it was agreed a report would be brought to address the backlog of maintenance on our highways within the broader context of the funding position of Leeds. Since 2010, Leeds City Council has provided over almost £200 million worth of capital investment, and yet still faces a backlog of £288 million, a backlog which has increased and have been exacerbated by inflation in recent years, but also exacerbated in a lot of the storms we had last year. And there are some lovely graphs within the report that you can peruse at your leisure. This has obviously been through scrutiny. It's really good to have Councillor Bithell here, who's chaired the scrutiny board that looked at this, and I do want to thank her and the whole board for their work. Obviously, there is the letter that Scrutiny are sending within the report, but broadly, Scrutiny they would like to see us see a funding position move where we're moving to more preventative rather than reactive work in our highways, which hopefully, as the economy of the country gets on a better footing, would be lovely to see, and also confirmation of the Network North funding. I shall leave it there for opening remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. What I'll do is I'll bring Councillor Bithell in now to see if you've got any comments, please.
Thanks, Leader. We were asked to look at this approach from this paper on a pre-decision basis in July, and I'd just like to take the opportunity to thank both the executive member and officers for the openness and engagement which they showed with that. It's really how we can add the most value to decision making as a scrutiny board. I'd like to acknowledge the brilliant work going on in the service, and members of the board were really impressed by the scale of the activity and the level of creativity that's going on and the innovation taking place, especially around the AI work that's going on at the moment. We also really recognise the huge challenges around funding for highways maintenance and the scale of the works required in our city and the degradation of materials because of the ageing network and, of course, the increasing impact of extreme weather due to climate change. It really is a problematic time. Obviously, the report's appended, but just our key conclusions, I guess. There was a real endorsement from members around the approach to using first-time permanent patch repairs as much as possible over and above temporary works. And we do absolutely recognise the affordability challenges around that. And we would welcome a more detailed assessment of the associated costs and resources required to prioritise work in this way in future. Members raised concerns during the work about the consistency of repairs, especially in regard to third parties. And I know we all want to see a right first time approach to surface repairs. And we've asked officers to consider whether any changes to the statutory code for reinstatement works should be recommended to the new government to assist us in achieving this ambition. We examine the way that we communicate with the public, looking at the complexity of the challenge we face and the reasons for our actions, so that temporary works versus permanent repair is explained to local residents so that they can understand why we're returning to sites. We'd like to see further work on that AI and the innovative technology. Whilst we were incredibly impressed, it seems like there's going to be a lot of scope in the future for that to deliver improved value for money and efficiency. Members really recognise the wider challenges of long-term funding certainty for highways maintenance and the complexity of current arrangements. I committed to write on behalf of the board to the Minister for Future of Roads and the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, and I really welcomed Councillor Pryor agreeing to be a co-signatory to that letter. And that letter, as well, as has been said, is included in the pack. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bithell. Councillor Lamb, would you like to come in, please?
Yep, thank you, Chair, and thank you to Councillor Bithell and your scrutiny board for the work on this. Obviously, this is on the agenda following the white paper I brought to Council back in March, so I'm pleased to see the follow-up that's happened and the work at scrutiny that's been done since then. This is one of those issues that grates our residents the most, the state of the roads in the city. It's not unique to Leeds by any stretch of the imagination, but it is a huge issue. It would be useful to get some comments and some further information and clarity about the £1.5 million that was being sent to us from Network North funding that I believe you've written to, and what the implications are if we don't get that. It would be useful to know from Gary. Obviously, we've got the 288 million figure in previous times. That's been expressed in how many years behind we are. I think it was 19 and a half years. Is that still the case? And what's the worst position? Is it still Beeston and Holbeck at 28 and a half years backlog as the worst ward in the city? And the final thing is really some comment from Gary perhaps and officers around how we're going to embrace technology to really help us drive this agenda forward. There are other councils I'm aware of. Birmingham are coming up to the end of a PFI contract. PFI is not an option, but the approach that's been taken sounds like something. There's not many things we'd steal from Birmingham, but that's probably one that's worth having a look at. And I also understand North Yorkshire are investing in some interesting equipment which can lead to a much more rapid response. Yet their roads are terrible, Councillor Lewis. I agree, but they are. I think where there's innovation going on, we should look at it. And given the position we're in, it's worth perhaps for a council being a bit less risk averse than we instinctively are, and trying some different approaches to see if we can make some progress.
Thank you. I think quite a lot of those comments were directed at officers, so who'd like to come in, please? Gary, please.
Thank you, Leader. I'll have a go. Hopefully I've noted them all down. Perhaps if I do them in the reverse order. In essence, we are committing considerable resource at the moment to reviewing our processes in this area, and that does include materials and different machinery that can be used on the highway. And we have seen North Yorkshire's use of their new pothole machine. It did cost £500,000, so a very significant investment. What the team are planning to do is we get approached about all sorts of materials and machinery virtually every day. And so rather than duplicating, what we're going to try and do is go to the likes of North Yorkshire and get their experience of that particular machine. We know Sheffield are doing something and others are doing other things as well. So we're going to try and share our experiences across the board to try and find a way forward here that is best value, because these are very expensive pieces of kit. But the bottom line is we want to embrace the scrutiny board recommendations, very much in line with what we want to do. We want to embrace technology because that is clearly the way forward. Highways maintenance has always been, certainly in my time and obviously members' time here, a very high priority for the council and will remain so. In terms of, I think you asked about Holbeck and Beeston and the 288 million in terms of years. Rather in this forum commit to saying something I might regret, I'd like to just double check that, if that's okay, Councillor Lamb, and come back to you with the definitive position. I hope that's covered all your points.
Thank you, Gary. Councillor Lamb, please.
Yeah, I think it just about has. It was really the broad approach to embracing technology and AI and things like that, and how quickly we think, and it's some of it is mindset. That are we ready as a council to be at the forefront of innovation, not waiting always for others and go and see what they've done, but are we going to be a leader that other people are looking to see how we did it?
The team have been on with this for some months now, and we have something called, which is referenced in the papers, the Highways Maintenance Revitalisation Programme, which, as I say, has been in play now for many months. And the idea is that this time next year, if not before, we will come forward with recommendations to Councillor Pryor and, if necessary, the Executive Board with potentially new ways of working across the whole service of highways, because it's not just in materials and machinery. There might be other things that we're looking at as well. So in many respects, a challenging time, but an exciting time, and hopefully we will lead in this area.
Thank you. And for Gary and the service, lots of people come and look at the way we deliver things in Leeds as well. So it is in many areas, a lot of the projects we have delivered have been ones that people have wanted to come and see how we've done it. So I think that's important to note as well. Councillor Pryor, please.
Just to sum up, I just want to put on record my thanks to the Highways team who literally fill thousands of potholes. I think members will all know how much residents get in touch with us about this, and it is gosh, sometimes it's like pushing water uphill, isn't it? There's always going to be more, but the team do a phenomenal job at keeping our roads as good as they are. This is a national problem that I hope that we'll be able to get on top of. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to turn to the recommendations on page 377. I take it everybody is happy with those recommendations, and we'll turn on to item 15, please.
Thank you. So this is the Leeds City Council vote in the Leeds Business Improvement District 2025 to 2030 ballot. This report is the second recent paper brought to Executive Board on the bid. This includes the business plan from the bid and what they're planning to do before 2030. This is on a enlarged geography as Leeds City Centre grows, as does the Business Improvement District. So this paper provides a basis for the recommendation for Executive Board for a positive vote in support of Leeds bid and delegates our vote to the Director of City Development. I shall leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pryor. Councillor Lamb?
Yeah, thank you. I'm happy to support the recommendations. I think the bid has been positive for the city overall. I would perhaps, one bit of feedback was how impressively glossy the brochure they sent round was, and perhaps I'd rather they spent the money on delivering things rather than giving us a very, very heavyweight glossy brochure. But yeah, it's been very positive. The key thing is that the expanded area is communicated well, and it's done with the new businesses, not to them, that they're fully on board with it and see the benefits as well.
Thank you. I think as Leeds is the centre of the printing industry in many ways, to see every trick of the trade included in that brochure was a good advert for the print industry. So I'm going to turn to the recommendations. I mean, clearly it is in favour of the vote, and there's a couple of things that we will follow up with the bid should the ballot be successful. So I take it everybody is happy with the recommendation. That's great, thanks. And we'll move on to the final item under Councillor Rafiq's portfolio, please, item 16.
Thank you, Leader. This is an annual update on the targets set both at council and the city level. Can I take this opportunity to thank officers led by Polly Cook and members, particularly those who actually serve on the SEAC Climate Emergency Advisory Committee led by Councillor Dye, for all their work in this regard. Since the City Council declared a climate emergency in 2019, the zero carbon pillar has become essential to the Council's best city ambition. The Council has taken action to rapidly reduce carbon emissions and reverse the decline in biodiversity, while supporting people to make more sustainable choices which can improve their standard of living. These actions to address the climate emergency can be seen right across the council services and directorates, as well as in our partnership we're working throughout the city. Whilst the council, with the council being internationally recognised for its work in this area, receiving an A grade from the Carbon Disclosure Project for the second year running. The report provides an overview of some of the schemes and projects which the council has taken to reduce carbon and greenhouse gas emissions, including improving energy efficiency in homes and public sector buildings, as well as the expansion of the lease pipes, district heating network, electrifying our fleet. We are one of the leading councils in this area, one of the biggest EV registrations outside London, and our ambitious tree planting programme and encouraging biodiversity. I'll stop there. I think the report is quite positive, and we are, I think in terms of reaching net zero, we are probably one of the leading councils, not just core cities, kind of achieve that. There is a lot more could be done, a lot, given the resources, but I'll stop there and take any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Rafiq. Councillor Lamb, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, there's a lot of positive things in the report, a lot of positive progress. The question I wanted to pick up was, everyone will have seen in the news this week that incinerators are now considered the dirtiest forms of energy production in the country, and therefore in the city. And I put my hands up with it, something we've all supported. And as a council, we are all in on this incinerator and the district heating network. So just in light of what's been in the press this week, I just thought it would be useful to get some comment from Councillor Rafiq and Polly about if that changes, and are we still comfortable that is compatible with our climate goals.
James, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As you might expect, following the BBC article that appeared yesterday or the day before, we've had quite a lot of press interest on this. So we've done a fair bit of work to provide reassurance in terms of our current work and how the RERF works and what it contributes in terms of the carbon agenda. So what I'd suggest I do, I share with you the detailed response that we've prepared, which hopefully will provide the reassurance that you're looking for. Clearly, as things develop in the future, we might need to look at alternatives, but at the present time, when you actually consider all the different alternatives that we could have, it's the best solution that we've got in place.
Thank you, James. Does somebody else want to come in on this item? I don't see anybody wanting to come in, so I shall turn to recommendations on page 466. And I take it everybody is happy with those. That's great. We've agreed that item, and that's the end of the meeting. Thank you, everybody.